This is the Outlap F1 podcast featuring America's own Cody, Andy, and Deanna. Your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. Join us on the Outlap. The unofficial first half of the Formula One season for 2025 is now in the books. And the Hungarian GP that ended that first half, to be honest, I didn't think really disappointed. So I thought it was actually pretty entertaining. We're going to get into it in just a little bit. You have found the Outlap F1 podcast. This is season 7, episode number 27. It's our 2025 Hungarian GP review show. And you've just got Andy tonight. I am flying solo. So it's going to be a unique recording for me. It's been a while since I've tried to do one of these solo. Cody is up in the north woods of Wisconsin, where he's not necessarily close to cell towers, so he's kind of not able to record and share his thoughts. He did text me some of his thoughts as he watched the race. But anyway, if Cody does end up listening to this, I hope he catches lots of fish. Hope he gets some good weather. Hope he enjoys the outdoors. And, when he comes back, we're going to get a pretty cracking second half of the season underway for sure. So if you have found our show, like David Croft always would say, welcome along. You can find it on Blue Sky. You can find us on Blue Sky, on X, Instagram, Discord, and of course here on YouTube. At Outlet F1 Podcast is the handle for all of that. If you enjoy what you're hearing, I think we're just going to do audio for this one. But generally, if you like what you're seeing, you can leave us either a like or a subscribe button. Or if you're on your favorite podcasting app, a 5-star review will definitely help us come up a little bit better in F1-related search results. We would be most appreciative if you'd like to do that. Email the show. You can always do that. outlapf1@gmail.com. We'll get your comments to us. Thank you so much to Outlap F1 Nation, who continues to support our show, including Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and of course, Jonathan Scott. If you would like to become a member of that hashtag Outlap F1 Nation, get your name shouted out at the beginning of each episode. You can see our anchor page. There is a link in all of our show notes. It'll take you there. If you want to give $1, $5, not under any obligation to do that whatsoever. We're just glad that you're listening, to be quite honest with you. But if you'd like to do that, it will help and go right back into the show. We're not trying to do this to try to make profit or anything. We're just trying to keep our recording platform and our technology as current as we can. Okay, so we will start, as we always are apt to do, with our headlines of the day. I just have my headline here, and mine is, well, we may have ended up what we expected in the end, but the journey to get there was anything but straightforward. And in the end, Lando Norris made the strategy work and tightened up that driver's championship right before the break. But this was anything other than a straightforward, what we would have thought going into it, at least what I would have thought going into it was this was going to be McLaren dominating the weekend. They certainly dominated the practices, that's for sure. But when we got to qualifying, particularly in Q3, everything kind of changed. So let me try to tee this all up here, and we'll take you through what the final qualifying classification was on that fateful Saturday. All right, here we go. All right, going out in Q1, in P20, the Williams, they were expecting to struggle here, and that kind of came to fruition. Alex Albon. P19 was Nico Hulkenberg. P18 was Esteban Ocon. P17 was Pierre Gasly. P16 was Yuki Tsunoda. Advancing through the Q2, but going no further. P15 was Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes. That was a bit of a surprise, especially given what the weather did. P14 was Franco Colapinto. P13, Carlos Sainz. P12, boy, struggle bus all weekend for this poor guy. Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari. Wow, ouch. And P11, aiming to get that consecutive P11 finish streak, starting P11. That was Ollie Behrman in the Haas. Your top 10 from 10 to 1. Not a typical top 10, what we're normally used to seeing. P10 was Isaac Hadjar. P9 was Liam Lawson. P8, surprising to see him all the way down here, Max Verstappen. We will talk about Red Bull. P7, good things happening now for Kick Sauber, and particularly Gabby Bortoleto. P6 was Lance Stroll. Hey, look, Aston Martin back of the grid in Spa this weekend. Totally different story, totally different racetrack. P5, Fernando Alonso. The Warrior is back, continuing. Again, seeing the good Aston Martin reaction to this racetrack. Fernando Alonso definitely took advantage of it. P4 was George Russell. P3 was Lando Norris. P2 was Oscar Piastri. And P1, we got to talk about this dude's lap because this was a thing, especially in Q3. Not a McLaren on pole. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari with a 1:15.372. So the big story of qualifying was a bit of weather that rolled in at the start of Q3, and the wind, which had been blowing in one direction in Q1 and Q2, which saw the McLarens pretty much dominating. I think they were 4 or 5 tenths up at the end of Q2. It looked like it was just going to be, was it going to be Lando? Was it going to be Oscar? The wind totally shifted around, and that took away some of the McLaren overall, at least one lap qualifying pace that they were showing. And Charles Leclerc, being the only one of the top 10 who actually improved on his Q2 lap time, ends up getting it done. Just for reference, uh, Lando Norris's Q2 lap time was a 1:14.890. Charles Leclerc's pole lap time is 4 tenths slower, a 1:15.372. So definitely the weather changed. It brought Mercedes back into play. George Russell sticks it on P4 after Kimi Antonelli failed to get out of Q2 and was at the bottom of, I think he had some laps deleted there. So that definitely did not help his time whatsoever too. So a very odd qualifying, a very bit of a mixed up grid. Also got a note, Max Verstappen all the way down to P8. Red Bull tried, I think, to throw everything, maybe and the kitchen sink at that car. And we've seen them have kind of this happen before, where they show up on a Friday and they're really nowhere. And then come Saturday, they get that car right, and Max does the Max thing and just pulls it, drags that car up the standings into the top 5. Not to be this weekend. Could not get the car to want to turn the way that Max likes it. This car really exposed Red Bull's lack of pace, particularly in mid-speed corners. That's what this track has in spades, is a lot of that. So Red Bull was struggling. Lewis Hamilton was struggling. I mean, Lewis Hamilton basically came out and said after the qualifying that he thought he was useless and that the Ferrari strategy should be maybe a change of driver. I think he's being a little more than hard on himself there, but yeah, I mean, you definitely have to feel for him, when your teammates puts it on pole with a great lap and Lewis can only manage P12. That was really tough. For me personally, as the McLaren fan, I was kind of shocked. It was really wow. You saw Piastri and I think Lando was 1-2 after the first run in Q3, and all I kept saying was that was not enough. And then they did the second run, and it still just wasn't enough. It got a little bit better, but the pace and the where that car was making its lap time over the course of the practices was in the second sector, and it just didn't happen. And Leclerc's was just consistently better than his Q3 lap. It wasn't anything really. If you look at all of the sectors, put the sectors by themselves, it's really nothing all that great. But you put them together, and it's enough to claim pole here in Hungary. So good going, Charles Leclerc. So Cody did chime in with some thoughts of his own on the qualifying, particularly what he thought was Leclerc, Alonso, and Bortoleto rocked the qualifying, and Leclerc's lap kind of came out of nowhere. And yeah, I basically would agree. Aston Martin, for starting way down in Spa, certainly had turned the tables around this weekend. Now, granted, this is a very different track. We said where the Aston Martin was in trouble in Spa was particularly in the straights and with the top line speed. But whatever the case was, that you don't need a whole lot of top line straight line speed here at the Hungaro ring. So they were definitely able to take the characteristics of their car. Maybe they got better because of what happened with the weather. I don't know. But that car found a sweet spot, and both, like I said before, Alonso and Stroll, P5 and P6 respectively. And then you got to give a shout out to Gabby Bortoleto, not only a Q3, but a P7 in a Kick Sauber that, again, seems to be getting better. I mean, every time we look around, there's Gabby Bortoleto and there are Nico Hulkenberg getting that car consistently now into Q3. So they are now a threat for points pretty much every weekend. All right, so we will flip over to Sunday and we'll take you through really quickly kind of the results of the race, and then we'll get into some reaction for it. Starting, of course, with our back markers, the non-classified finisher, the streak comes to an end. Ali Behrman does not set the record for the most consecutive finishes in non-P1 in a certain position. He would have had to finish P11 to get that record all by himself. He does not finish. He gets the only DNF of the race after 48 laps. His car could go no further. P19 was Charles Leclerc. Not Charles Leclerc, excuse me. P19 was Pierre Gasly. P18 was Franco Colapinto. P17 was Yuki Tsunoda. P16 was Esteban Ocon. P15 was Alex Albon. P14 was Carlos Sainz. And P13 was Nico Hulkenberg. All of these runners finished one lap down to the leaders. Nothing really, specifically sticking out here. Yuki Tsunoda, again, kind of in the bottom. More pain for Red Bull, although it seemed like it was affecting both cars. So, yeah, I mean, we've already seen heads roll at Red Bull, so I don't want to pound them too much on this. But, yeah, they've obviously realized, I think they're now understanding that they have a lot of work to do. And they're probably going to basically kind of write off the rest of this season and focus pretty much all on 26. Expected struggles for Williams here. Well, with Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz, they looked coming into the weekend that they thought they were going to struggle. That ended up proving to be correct. So no points for either Williams. And the P5, P6, P7 battle continues to heat up now with Aston Martin getting the result that they got today. So that's going to put some pressure there. All right, so we'll move into the midfield and then, of course, our podium. P12, again, it was shocking to see him qualify here. It was even more shocking to see him not be able to really carve through the field. That was Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari, just not with the car most of the weekend for sure. P11 is Isaac Hadjar in the Racing Bull. P10, good rally for him in the qualifying form. Kimi Antonelli manages to finish in the points, so that's a bit of a rally for Mercedes, who went back to an actual older spec. They took some of their upgrades off this weekend, so and the weather kind of played to their strength, and now look, they're doing better. So that's good result for Kimi Antonelli. P9, not where you would expect him to be, especially given what we thought coming into this season. Max Verstappen ends the unofficial first half of the season with a P9, and it's a P9 on merit. Just unable to kind of get anything going. They tried a very, very ambitious early pit stop to try to get some cheap track position with the first round of pit stops, and that ended up really not working. He ended up kind of right back where he started. And then they thought about maybe trying to do a one stop for Max. Ended up proving not to be a thing that they were able to do. So he ends up having to do the two stops. So again, P9 was all he could muster. P8 was Liam Lawson in the Racing Bulls. So the junior team outscores both of the works team here. So that's interesting in its own way. P7, here comes the good form for Aston Martin. Lance Stroll, not only in the points, but good points. And P6, Gabby Bortoleto in the Kick Sauber, his career best finish, a P6, a great result for Kick Sauber. It's what they needed when they needed it. Like, they are a major contender, not only for P6, but Williams has got to be looking over their shoulder now. P5 and the constructors might not be out of reach, especially if they can continue. If Kick Sauber can continue to put these types of results together, it's going to be very interesting to see what they do in the second half for sure. P5, the old warrior was back this weekend. Fernando Alonso, giving the leaders a headache, basically backed the bus up to make the one stop work. And not only did it work, but it kept everybody behind him because it was really, really, really tough to pass out there. So Fernando Alonso, a well-earned P5. I remember watching him do this with McLaren in a year that McLaren car was terrible. This was one of his tracks where he would specialize at. So we've seen him do this before, but well done to them. Well done to Aston Martin. Well done to Fernando Alonso for sure. P4, we're going to have to try to get into what happened to him. Charles Leclerc comes home a very disappointing P4 after starting on pole, after leading through the first stint and the majority of his second stint. It would have been basically the virtual lead, if not for something that happened to his car on lap 40. Now, there's been a lot of radio messages that's been talked about what he thought was happening. He thought it was a strategy call. He thought it was a wing adjustment. We don't really know. Ferrari have not come out and said officially what happened. The post-race comments were more indicative of it was a chassis. Something failed on the chassis. We don't know necessarily what that means. That's very, very, very vague. We'll talk about in the fan email segment a little bit more about what some speculation is about what happened to Leclerc, but the guy who could have maybe even won this race, and by all rights, especially through 40 laps, was in a position to win this race, despite the great pace of the McLarens, uh, comes home in a disappointing P4 off the podium. He was very, very dejected and very, very upset, I think, after this race. So that opened up the podium spot for George Russell in the Mercedes, who the weather came to the Mercedes. They took the car, they went to an old spec, and lo and behold, now the Mercedes are doing well again in what has probably been a very maddeningly inconsistent first half, unofficial first half of the season for them. But it ends on a pretty good high with George Russell coming in P3. The P2 and the P1 battle, we will talk about this in just a little bit, but P2 sees Oscar Piastri only 0.6 of a second at the end of the day behind his teammate who comes home to take the win. That is Lando Norris coming from P3 on the grid, having pretty much a disastrous first lap of the race that saw him all the way down at one point in P5. McLaren splitting the strategies. Oscar Piastri going for an early undercut on Leclerc to try to undercut Leclerc early, going to a two-stop. Lando Norris basically not having any other real strategy in his disposal other than a Hail Mary one-stop, and it was the Hail Mary one-stop that ended up being, at the end of the day, the preferred strategy because it stayed cool. It looked like it was potentially going to rain. It never really did, other than maybe an odd drop or two, but track temperature stayed low. The tire deg was not what it was expected, and McLaren car in clean air is a dangerous thing, and they super extended Lando's first stint. They got him in some clean air. That built a bit of a gap so that when he did pit, he was on newer, harder tires than people on their what they thought was going to be their first stint on the hard tire. And then when everybody else pitted, Lando's now in the position of having the high ground with the clean air. And basically, I think a 9-second gap when Piastri does come in for his second stop. Piastri charged like a maniac at the end of that race, and erases the entirety of the gap all the way down to, like I said, the 0.698 of a second at the end, including one heart-stopping for me dive bomb move on lap 69, where the timing didn't do it justice, but it was really this close to seeing another repeat of Canada because Oscar made a dive bomb into turn one from way, way back. Big lockup, lots of smoke. Almost catches the back of Lando's diffuser, but it does not. And so we ended up with, but because of that, that was basically the move where Oscar, I think, probably went for the win, but it necessarily wasn't to be. Lando comes home from P5 all the way up to P1 to take the win. Oscar comes home in P2, so our championship gets that much tighter because Lando gains some points back on Oscar there. So a bit of a heart stopper, especially in the late laps for me as a McLaren fan, for sure. I thought through 3/4 of this race that this was going to be Leclerc's. I was surprised at how well the Ferrari was moving, especially in the clean air, and the fact that Piastri, despite multiple attempts to try to raise his pace, really wasn't able to do so enough to get into the DRS. And even if he got into the DRS, it didn't seem to matter because Lando was trying to do the same thing to Russell, and he got within, I think, half of a second coming down the straight, which you normally would think, well, that should be pretty much game over, but was not to be. So it ended up being that split on strategy and the one stop working for Lando, the two stop, with Oscar and everybody else, at least the rest of had Lando just followed him in, he probably finishes third, if that, especially given what happened to Leclerc. And again, just as a neutral, you have to feel a bit for Charles in this case because it was just one of those things that, he's got it. It looks like he's on for, one of the few times where he's going to possibly win, and just didn't happen. Cody chimed in a little bit with this on Leclerc personally and said, Leclerc has the worst luck in F1, seemingly on for a win, robbed by chassis damage, which came out later. He and I were both ready to break Ferrari strategy over the coals. Leclerc with some very, very, very pointed and spicy radio. One of the longest captions I think I've ever seen. There's a meme out. I think people have set it to the Star Wars music at this point, telling his team how they don't listen to him and all this other stuff. And then he got, you could tell, by the time he came out in the media pen, someone had told him either what had happened to the car or what they thought had happened to the car. And he was clearly a different guy. So the guy who went in after the race was in one mood, and the guy who came back out was just kind of really despondent kind of at the end. But a race that we kind of got the result we thought we were going to do, with the McLarens out in front. They end up winning them by 20 plus seconds. So you look at just the results and you'd say, well, this was McLaren domination, but it really wasn't the case. I mean, once the wind turned around in Q3, until Leclerc had that issue, and it did mean that Piastri had to make a move around Leclerc, which he managed to get done. Until that happened, I was certainly not thinking that this was going to be a McLaren victory. So as a fan, obviously I'm happy. It's McLaren's 200th win. So that's a big achievement for that team. And their fourth consecutive 1-2. I feel like sometimes I have to be dreaming about what I'm watching, because it's scary how good these guys sometimes can be. But it definitely is looking like, at least in the drivers, we're going to have it's going to be Lando v. Oscar pretty much coming home the rest of the way. This result really does not put a mathematical nail in Max's coffin, but it's really, really hard. Gonna be very, very hard for Max to come back here. He's going to have the math is not with him at all at this point. McLaren's are going to have some DNFs or some running into each other, and Max is going to have to be there to not only take advantage, but take advantage big time, if that even is something that's going to happen. So that's your Hungarian GP. As a recap, we'll take a quick break. We'll come on back. We'll take a look at what this did to the points. We'll take a look at what this did to the team standings. And then we'll open it up to your thoughts on it, the fan email segment. I'll read some of Cody's other points, hand out a couple of awards. We'll talk about what we did for predictions and where that sits going into the second half of the season. So come on back. You are listening to the Outlap F1 podcast, and we'll be right back after this quick pit stop. Grab your flu powder, broomstick, or apparate to your favorite audio streaming service to join the discussion on Hogwarts, a podcast, where Dan and his friends have in-depth chapter-by-chapter breakdowns of each Harry Potter novel. Join the group as they dive into the magical world and discuss plot points, analyze character development, and occasionally go off the rails. Whether you're a muggle who's new to the series or a pure-blood wizard who won't need a remember-all, Hogwarts, a podcast, brings everyone to the Great Hall for a magical discussion. Hogwarts, a podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, welcome back on in. This is Season 7, Episode number 27 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our 2025 Hungarian GP review show, and you've got Andy. I'm flying solo tonight, like I said before, as Cody is up in northern Wisconsin, hopefully catching lots and lots of good fish up there. So I just kind of talked about the results of the Hungarian GP as F1 heads off to its summer break. And so now what we're going to do is take a look at the driver standings, and we're going to take a look at the constructor standings. So in the drivers, Oscar Piastri does maintain P1 in the drivers, checking in with 284 points. That is only 9 points now ahead of his teammate Lando Norris, who checks in now and up to 275 points on the season. P3 is Max Verstappen. He remains in P3, but is now also up to 187 points on the season. P4 is George Russell. He checks in with 172. P5, Charles Leclerc, checking in with his P4 today, gets up to 151 points. P6 is Leclerc's teammate Lewis Hamilton, checking in with 109 points. P7 is Kimi Antonelli, up back into the points this weekend. So now he is up to 64 points. P8 was Alex Albon for Williams, checking in, no points this weekend. So he remains on 54 points. P9, Nico Hulkenberg in the Kick Sauber. Never thought I would be saying that, especially at the end of this first half, given especially where they were in testing. But Nico Hulkenberg, P9 in the drivers, 37 points for him. And P10, Esteban Ocon maintains that P10 despite not getting any points today or this weekend. That he remains on 27 points for Haas. Our constructor standings. McLaren, Mercedes, well out in front. I thought I heard David Croft say that McLaren could skip all the races until Austin have their closest competitor do maximum scoring, and they would still be leading the championship. That only gets worse after this one. Clinching scenarios will be probably on the docket relatively early after the summer break because they are up to 559 points. They're only, I think, 70-some points or 60 points away from where they finished all of last year, which was good enough to win the Constructors. P2 is Ferrari. They are up to 260 points. P3 is Mercedes. They climb up to 236. P4, kind of on their own, is Red Bull Racing with 194. And here's where it gets really interesting. P5 and all the way down. P5 is Williams, still solidly in P5 on 70 points. But P6, Aston Martin have now reclaimed P6 in the Constructors with their results this weekend. They move up to 52 points, 1 point ahead of P7 Kick Sauber, who check in with 51. P8 are Racing Bulls. That they check in with 45. P9 is Haas. They remain on 35. And P10, no points for them this weekend, but still the highest scoring last place finisher right now in the Constructors. That is Alpine, who remain on 20 points. Okay, well, you've heard kind of my take and some of Cody's takes on the Hungarian GP. It's now time to open it up to your thoughts on what you saw this weekend, the fan email segment. We've got some really nice questions in here. First one comes from Mr. Dave Doherty. Thank you, sir. And he checks in and says, hi, team. Well, that was a surprise in quali, and on the race day, Aston Martin totally surprised me. I thought they did something brilliant. Mega job to them. Mercedes was a joy to watch in the race. It was like where they were there every now and again. P3, wow. But McLaren, they are fully the real deal, and Bortoleto was interesting to watch. I concur with McLaren and Gabby Bortoleto. I mean, Gabby Bortoleto is putting together a very solid rookie season, and he's doing it the way that you would almost want to do it as a rookie in Formula One because he's in a team that has no expectations. I think that's the brilliant part of this. I saw some of Fernando Alonso's comments after the race saying, you know, if Gabby Bortoleto was of a certain nationality, he'd be all over the papers and everything. Gabby Bortoleto is going to get his accolades one way or another because he's going to make them himself. It kind of reminds me when Charles Leclerc was in a Sauber, and you saw kind of what he did when he would have flashpoints. And this is Gabby Bortoleto getting his best finishes of the season, just as, you know, he continues to develop and as the car continues to get better. So good on Bortoleto, good for Kick Sauber. That's a story to watch because, you know, we want to, not only do we want to see the new drivers come in and get their feet wet and understand where they're going, but it's important, you know, just for overall the championship to see, hey, all 10 teams could actually score points and can have a day. So, you know, that was actually very fun to watch. I totally agree with you, Dave. Bortoleto is one to watch for sure in the second half of this season. And Mercedes, yeah, like we kind of talked about earlier in the first segment, they went back to an older spec where they kind of said, you know what, our upgrades just aren't doing it. We can't understand them, so we're going to go back to what we know kind of worked, back to what they were running kind of in Canada where they were very competitive. And the weather came to them and the wind probably came to them and the tire temps came to them. And George Russell was there to basically finish it out as the best of the rest. So fair play to what Mercedes did this weekend. That's, you know, good for them. You know, the P2 in the Constructors is not that far away. The question is what are we going to see from Ferrari the rest of the season? Because there were certainly parts of this weekend where Ferrari looked really strong. I mean, Leclerc, I thought, looked incredibly strong at points, obviously the qualifying and obviously the first two stints. But what the hell happened in that third stint? Until that kind of comes out, I really don't know kind of how to judge that performance. Now, it's something on a car break and that takes you out, yeah. But I was thoroughly impressed with what Leclerc was doing up until that point, for sure. Certainly was a headache for me as a McLaren fan because I didn't think we were going to get this one at certain points of it. As even though I thought coming into this weekend, this should have been an easy one for the boys from Woking. And then again, Dave, to your point about Aston Martin, yes, from absolutely nowhere in Spa to turning around and now being almost the best of the rest. Fernando Alonso putting together some awesome qualifying laps and some great race laps, and even on lap one, getting by Lando Norris as a legit pass was brilliant stuff. And Fernando knew what he had to do. They knew they were going on the one stop. They kind of had all but declared it based on the tires that they had left. So they knew what they had to do, and they went out and did it. And yeah, he was 30 seconds behind the top four, but I don't think he cared. And nobody got around him at the end of it. So Fernando Alonso, he can do that kind of stuff when he's got the opportunity, and the opportunity came knocking, he went right through the door. So, again, that's a team that I'm watching big time for next year because they could hit it out of the park with, of course, the help of one Adrian Newey. Final question from Dave. Could McLaren have done the one stop for both cars? And this is an interesting point because I do think that there's been a lot of discussion about this exact kind of point. Did they maybe try to do Oscar wrong by not allowing him to think about that strategy? What I am seeing from McLaren and how they're going to try to manage this now, it's different from when Toto Wolff did it with the Mercedes. When the Mercedes did it back in 2014, 2015, and it was Nico Rosberg versus Lewis Hamilton, the rules were really simple. Rules were whoever got the preferred grid position and made it through lap one would get the A strategy no matter what, and the car behind would also be on that same strategy. They wouldn't pit together, but they'd pit a lap later. So if it was a two-stop, both cars would do a two-stop. If it was a three-stop, both cars would do the three-stop. And we really didn't see any variance between the sides of the garages. McLaren have opted to do this a bit differently, where they're kind of letting their engineers and their drivers come up with the best result that they can on race day. Where if it's a late call to say, we think a one-stop is better, what do you think? They offered that to Lando. And at the time, Lando was kind of stuck in P4. There really wasn't anything else that you really could have done if you were just going to follow everybody in and pit with everybody else. He's got almost no shot at a podium at that point because Leclerc hadn't had the issue yet. So he may have finished in P3 had he just followed everybody in. But there was no chance to really get up amongst the leaders. But instead, they opted to extend. So they went through the graining because you could obviously hear the radio message that Lando said, my tires are done. I don't think that was code. I think that was actually they were pretty cooked. At least he thought they were cooked. But it's what we've seen with the Pirelli rubber this year, where they go through that graining and they feel awful. And then if you can push through that, these tires are still pretty damn durable. And the fact that he was able to get, I think, 25 laps or 26 laps on the mediums, and then he had a really long-ass stint. He had over 40 laps that he had to do, basically 40 laps on a set of hard tires. But he made it work. And the fact that he had to make it work means you're on the tire save strategy. You're not on the push strategy. You're the one trying to conserve resources and not take corners and not do anything else. Piastri had the easy strategy. He could just flat out to the floor push. And that's what he did, especially in the second stint. Once he got past Leclerc, it was purple lap after purple lap after purple lap, and I'm watching the gap come down and down and down, and I'm going, he's going to get there. And to be honest, I thought Piastri was going to get this one. I thought that he was going to get it with about maybe 2 or 3 laps to go, and I was very, very nervous of coming together. And we damn near had one, and it just kind of worked out that way. But I think my point is you're going to see, I think in the second half of this season, it's both the engineers and the drivers that are free to race. So they're free to make the best out of their Sunday, however it comes to them. And they're going to ask their drivers what they wanted to do. I mean, There were times where Tom Stallard was asking Oscar, what would you prefer on your second stint? More a pure undercut of Leclerc to get in front of him, or more tire delta to Lando? And Piastri responded, more tire delta to Lando. So, they have the freedom to do this. So you're going to probably see, especially if like something happens on a lap one, whoever's the second car, maybe try a more home run-esque type strategy to try to get back into it. And to me, that's what I think we all want to see as fans, is we want both of these guys to go at it as fair as they can, as hard as they can, and hopefully not have it coming together. I mean, maybe if you're in the fan of, you're sick of watching McLaren win, I think you're probably going to get your result, because I'm pretty sure there's going to have at least one more coming together. I can't see how it doesn't happen, but yeah, it's going to be exciting. That's for damn sure. But that, I think, is how they're approaching it. I think that's different than what we've seen in some intra-team battles before. All right, Rachel Fleming has checked in, and she asks question to me. She goes, I have to ask Andy, have you got any fingernails left for that one? That was tense. A really enjoyable race at the end. I do love a split strategy call, and Lando's side played it perfectly. Track position is key after all. What on earth happened to Leclerc's pace in the final stint? I thought he was on for the victory, and it turned into a poor fourth place with a time penalty to boot. Yeah, we didn't even mention that. Alonso watch. What a difference a week makes. Fifth place and looked on it all weekend. The several exclamation points. I totally agree with you there. Sauber watch. Firstly, they went for the wrong Sauber, who they say jumped the start. That is embarrassing for race control. However, Gabriel once again got points and is starting to look like the real deal. Nico moved slightly at the start, but still raced well. Final question for the summer break. What F1 car, in your opinion, was wasted by the drivers, aka the car was better than the drivers? For me, it's the Williams 2012. Yeah, it's the one where Pastor won the Spanish GP, but for me, that Williams was a podium contender for several races, and neither Pastor or Bruno Senna got anything near what that car could do. Interesting questions here, Rachel. Well, first of all, I'll tell you, I did not have much nails left at the end of it. They're recovering because, yeah, I was more than a little nervous. In fact, I was kind of in one of those situations where I was kind of scared to move. Watching the timing, watching it get closer, going, you could kind of tell where I thought like a move was coming, but in watching it go from, especially once Oscar got into Lando's DRS, I watched it go like 0.6, 0.4, 0.2, 0.4. 0.2, when they go through the DRS zones there. So it was nerve-wracking for sure. I didn't realize until I saw it just how close Oscar had gotten to taking one or both of them out. I mean, for sure, Oscar's, like, had they hit, now granted, they're 20 seconds up, but if they hit, Piastri's for sure losing parts of his front wing. And what you've also seen, though, what's even more worrisome is when the rear of these cars get hit, they don't like that at all. And what would that have done? Could we have seen a dramatically different result? Of course, in the cool down room, George Russell's there to say, well, why didn't you T-bone him there, Oscar? I think he's kind of half joking, but he was also being half serious, because that would have been George's opportunity to take one there. But I did enjoy the race overall. I thought it was tense. McLaren had to fight for it, which was, I actually thought, much more entertaining than what we saw in Spa, even though, as a McLaren fan, they're both 1-2 finishes, but I enjoyed it where it was much more of a fight. It's just kind of what I enjoy a lot more than watching a 20-second dominant victory. I mean, like I said, I want like 3 of those a year, and I'm good. After that, they can be more fights, but I do think for sure you're going to see Lando and Oscar be going at it the rest of this season, and I do think at some point they're going to take each other out, and I do think someone else is definitely going to take one of these races coming home for sure. Leclerc's pace, and our other question comes in from the formula, who asked, like, literally, what was it about Leclerc, talking about in his radio message, saying that the team needs to listen to him. Never got any details on what went wrong there. So there's what we know, and then there's what we're kind of speculating at this point. What we know is, from what we've seen on the radio, and I've actually looked for like transcripts of like his entire radio, it sounds like what Leclerc thought was the problem was when he came in for his second set of tires, they made some sort of a front wing adjustment that he didn't ask for. And the car felt then dramatically different. and he got very slow. He got 2 seconds a lap slower. What he didn't realize until after the race, until basically somebody showed him the data, was, oh, it wasn't a front wing adjustment. The car on the chassis side broke. What does that mean? Well, that we don't really know. So facts-wise, Ferrari have said it's a chassis issue. They're going to go investigate it. The speculation has come from George Russell, who thinks that Ferrari are still having some plank wear potential problems and that a one-stop was never in their cards, because what they've had to do at the end of these races is raise the minimum tire pressure on their last stints to prevent the plank from wearing any more than it already has. Now, Ferrari's both cars did pass scrutineering, so no disqualifications happened here. The theory that I've read, that even if they had done that, let's say they raised the tire pressure by like a pound, which is not something you want to do in an F1 car. You want to be running those tires, as, believe it or not, at the beginning as low on tire pressure as you can, because it's going to build up throughout the course of the stint. If they had done that, it only should have cost Leclerc maybe 1 or 2 tenths. It certainly shouldn't have cost him 2 seconds a lap, which is what it did. So, yeah, I mean, right now we're kind of in a black box of really not knowing until Ferrari want to come out and say what actually happened. Will they come out and say? Who knows? I mean, we're going to have 3 weeks before our next race minimum, so it is something to be on the lookout for, I think, over the break, but I'm not expecting to get any real definitive word until we kind of reconnoiter in Zandvoort. But yeah, it was 2 different cars. I mean, he was in position easily after the first stint. I thought he drove a brilliant first stint, Leclerc did, to maintain and keep Piastri behind him. And Piastri did the patient waiting game that he was going to have to do, because once he realized, once he went for the undercut and it didn't work, the only thing left for Oscar was to kind of wait out and see if he could get him in the second stint, and he ended up doing it. Again, probably aided by the fact that Charles Leclerc's car was not correct, with something going on the chassis side. So that's what was there. Alonso watch, yeah, I mean, I said this before, worst team last week in Spa to the second best team easily this weekend. So well done, Fernando Alonso, and well done, Aston Martin. Because of that, they are back into the P6 fight. Well timed, because they definitely needed it. I still do think Kick Sauber probably have a little more overall momentum with both drivers. I do think that this was very track specific for Aston Martin. But they're going to a very similar type of track with a lot of twisty bits in Zandvoort coming out of the break. So if they're going to make hay, they got to kind of do it now, because then we go from there. I think we go from there to Monza, and then Monza's a very different track, and I would expect Aston Martin to not do well there. So, yeah, I mean, but good on them for this weekend. It's kind of interesting. They have not identified why they were so good. They're not exactly sure. So sometimes you just find it, and the weather finds you, and you can just click with the car. And it looked like both drivers this weekend, even Stroll coming home in P7, which is one of his better results on the season for sure. Last question from Rachel. F1 car that never really lived up to it. Tough one. I was always very frustrated by the 2011, 2012 McLarens, because that looked like a car that could have easily was one of the fastest cars out there. And there were so many weekends where, this is when I was in the height of my Lewis Hamilton fandom, and there were so many weekends where I'm like, oh, Lewis has got this. And some sort of execution thing would happen, and they'd screw something up. Like Hungary was a perfect example that year, I think, where Lewis was winning, and then they had a bad pit stop, and then he got a penalty, and then he ended up spinning, and he's like down in 6th, and he comes back, and he rallies all the way back to 4th, and it's just kind of like that the whole year. And meanwhile, Red Bull and Vettel were just, once they've kind of figured out that car in the second half, they were just unable to really get there. And it took all the way, I think, until Circuit of the Americas before Lewis actually came back and won a race. So that was always, to me, one of the more disappointing cars, because I thought they had 2 drivers that could be doing what Lando and Oscar are doing now, and it just never came to pass. So that's, I guess, my personal one. I guess I'd really have to kind of delve into my history archives, but that was the first one that came to my head when I thought about it. And I think your nomination there, Rachel, is as good as any. The Williams of 2012, yeah, it wins the race. Probably a better car than. I mean, you had two drivers that didn't have a whole lot of experience. Pastor Maldonado was there because he brought money, and Bruno Senna was there because he brought money and cachet and a name. That was when Williams was really at the end of the Sir Frank era, starting to go down the spiral of just looking to find money wherever they could to kind of keep their operation going. So it was probably their last hay before their down spiral that it's really only now that I think they're really starting to come out of. So yeah, it takes a while to go up and to go down in Formula One for sure. So we hope we answered the question about Leclerc. Just going to read the last of Cody's comments. His one about Red Bull, he was obviously not a happy camper this weekend. Red Bull is in free fall. Supermax is now Max Payne, beat by an RB, a Sauber, and both Aston Martins on pace. Next season can't come soon enough for Max and Lewis. And his comments about Leclerc is the worst luck in F1, seemingly on for a win, robbed by the chassis damage, which, like I said, came out later. He and I were both ready to rake Ferrari over the strategy. Probably would have been the easy analysis paralysis, but I've had to kind of revise it because I had them as the easy pick, and then you learn that, there's something wrong with the car, so you really can't blame the strategy there. Speaking of awards, we will now move into those awards, and we'll start with the rubbish. My on-track ones, I'm going to give it to either one of these two, probably Alpine or Red Bull. They just seemed that both of these types of cars were nowhere all weekend, particularly, Yuki Tsunoda was not anywhere, and they weren't expecting him really to be, but I was shocked that I have to recalibrate what I think is good or not good about the Red Bull car, and it's not what it historically has been. The Red Bull car is only going to really show well in places with a lot of straight line speed. I think they'll show really good in Monza, where they can trim the downforce off that car, run that wing super, super, super low, and let Max do his thing. Beyond that, I don't know where that Red Bull car is really trying to cook right now, and it doesn't look like they know where it's going to be. So I think the rest of the season is going to be a lot of hunting and pecking and throwing stuff at that car to try to see what works. They may find a couple tracks where it suddenly works well. It seems like the Red Bull, from some of the data analysis that I've read, is really good in some high-speed places. That's why they were so good in Japan. They may be really good at Austin and Circuit of the Americas, which has got a lot of high-speed corners too. So I don't think it's over for Max to get another win this year. I've already said that before. I thought he would. But it's going to be touch and go the rest of the season. And he's all but out of it in the math now. He's got to have, Oscar and Lando both have to have some major issues. And Max has to have some major good stuff happen to him on those weekends where the McLaren have issues. So it's going to get really tough coming home for Max there. Analysis paralysis. I'm going to give this one to Red Bull simply because they really couldn't figure out what they wanted to do with Max. They thought they were going to try the quick first undercut. They were the first ones to stop. Then they thought for a minute that they were going to actually try to put Max on the one stop and hang him out there and try to see if that could work. Neither of them worked. So they ended up doing the two stop. They followed all the two stoppers in, and it really couldn't get any better than the P9 that he came home with. Just a tough weekend. Throwing different setups at the car, none of it seemed to work. And I think that was kind of the frustrating part for sure. I know my partner in crime, Cody, had to have been not a very happy camper watching what Red Bull tried to do this weekend. But it was just tough. Could they have maybe gotten a little bit better had they tried a one-stop? Maybe. But they committed so early to the two-stop that it really kind of took that off the board for them. Dark horse of the day. This one was easy for me. Fernando Alonso and Gabby Bortoleto. I'll give the agent and client combination here. Both these guys, I thought, punched well above their weight and are very deserving of the dark horse of the day for me. Borderline to give Gabri Bortoleto the driver of the day. That was certainly the fans' vote. That is Cody's vote for driver of the day. He selected Gabby Bortoleto. I'm going to go with Lando. Maybe I'm being a homer here, but he did come back from P5. It was a home run strategy, and it wasn't helped by a safety car. It wasn't like he got lucky and he got into it. He made that strategy work, and it was not an easy strategy for sure. For a guy who we criticize a lot of times is making the mistake at the critical time, he had to do 20 laps on an older set of hard tires and not make a mistake, and especially late. And he didn't make that mistake. Now, question that I always am going to have is, what does this mean? Is this finally the beginning of a narrative change for one Lando Norris? I don't know. I've thought that many times, and then the next race we go back to screwing up in Q3 or making the critical mistake at the critical time. But he's in this fight, and he's not going away. And yeah, he's in the best shot he's probably going to have for a while. So these two guys, Oscar and Lando, man, they're going to go at it in the second half of this season. I'm going to take some X-Lax, or not some X-Lax, some Pepto-Bismol probably, and try to keep my stomach acid juices not going crazy during trying to watch these races coming home, because there's going to be moments that I know are going to be tough. I'm more of a team guy. Obviously, I root for Lando a lot, but I'm also very much a team guy, and there's going to be pain points where I'm going to watch teammates going after each other. That's just natural. But I have to remember, you got to be fortunate enough to get into this position in the first place, and it's a great thing that they've been able to do this. Particularly since, you're talking 2 years ago in Bahrain, they were almost dead last. So from there to here has been an amazing journey. It's going to be an amazing journey coming home, and we're going to bring it to you all the way home, the good, the bad, maybe some of the ugly, as this championship unfolds. So I don't know what's going to happen at this point. It's the two of these guys. I still probably give Oscar like a 55-45 shot at this point, but Lando's right there, man. And you also look at the recent form. He's won 3 out of the 4 races. So if he can continue to put those types of runs together, the points will work themselves out. So don't know what's going to happen, but I am all here for the journey for sure. All right, so let's talk predictions. I had myself a pretty good weekend. I got 4 points. I got P1 on the podium. I got P2 on the podium. So my homer pick came good for me there. I got the fastest lap time. I got the prop bet. So I finished the weekend with 4 points. Cody only got a solitary point. He got the quali lap time because he was actually slower than I was. So good on you for that, Cody. I take a 2-race lead going into the break. So I have a little bit of breathing room, but that's another competition that is going to come down to probably the end, because neither of us have been able to shake the other one. I have a good predictions weekend, then Cody does, or we both have some bad ones, but Cody comes out on top. So yeah, who knows what's going to happen with our predictions game for sure. But that is the Hungarian GP. If you have stuck with me all the way till now, massive thank you. It's different experience trying to do this thing solo. I hope I made more sense than I didn't. But anyway, we're going to take a break, obviously, along with F1. We have not heard any George Russell contract news as of yet. If something does break over the course of the break, stay attuned to our social media. We will definitely bring that to you. If anything else happens Major League over the summer break that is newsworthy, we will share that as well. But we're going to, like I said, it's time probably for the break. And we'll be back at the end of August when we go to Zandvoort. And then the second half is upon us. We've got our own trip to Circuit of the Americas that we are trying to plan out and get all ready to go. So we're excited for that. So it's going to be an exciting second half of the season. Don't think just because it's going to be between two guys that this is going to have some fireworks. There are definitely wonderful reasons to watch. Like I said before, the P5 and below battle, I think, is going to be so interesting to watch. Who gets it right, who doesn't get it right, because we have a variety of different tracks in the second half of the season. So we've seen, risers and fallers all over the place, even though we don't necessarily think we're going to see a whole lot of necessarily upgrades coming through. but you won't want to miss that. So again, if you've been with us like all the way up till now, thank you. Take care of yourselves out there. And as always, may all your laps be fast.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Outlap F1 podcast. If you like what you heard, click that subscribe button and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. If you want to connect with us outside of the show, check out our website at www.outlapf1.com. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at outlapf1 podcast, or email us at chatnow@outlapf1.com. As always, thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you on the next one.